County Board of Supervisors work session Tuesday, May 16, 2023, 3 p.m. Board meeting room 39 Bank Street, Southeast Chatham, Virginia. Ms. Kinzie, roll call, please.
Mr. Cheshire?
Here.
Mr. Ingram?
Here.
Mr. Scares?
Here.
Mr. Tucker?
Present.
Mr. Warren?
Here.
Mr. Dudley?
Present.
Mr. Dalton?
Here. Moving to item 3, any items to be added to the agenda?
I hadn't got anything.
Not hearing any?
No, sir.
All right, moving to item 4, approval of the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the agenda be approved as presented.
All right, got a motion by Mr. Warren. Get a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Tucker. Any discussion on the motion? If not, gentlemen, we're ready to vote.
You got a vote coming up? Anything?
Agenda approved, 7-0 no. For the citizen convenience, all work sessions and committee meetings are now being recorded and can be viewed on the same YouTube location as the Board of Supervisors business meeting. Please remember that the board's work session is designed for internal board and county staff communication, discussion, and work. It's not a question and answer session with the audience. Accordingly, during the work session, no questions or comments from the audience will be entertained. Respectful, any outbursts, disorders, conduct from the audience will not be tolerated and may result in the offending the person removal from the work session. As a reminder, all county citizens, all other appropriate parties are designated by the board's bylaws are permitted to making comments on the hearings of the citizens sections of tonight's business meeting. Moving to item 5A, presentations. Update from SOVA, Mr. Steve Hanley. Welcome, sir.
Well, good afternoon. Thanks for having me. My name is Steve Heatherly. I'm the CEO and Market President of SOVA Health. And I came here, I've been here for about 4 months, and I came here from Western North Carolina, the Asheville area. And what drew me here was the energy and passion I see in this community for growth. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about some observations of mine 4 months into being here, some things that we have to work on and things that we have to partner with folks about. So to date, I've met with hundreds of people, and I've conducted about, more than 200 in-depth interviews with people inside the hospital, people outside the hospital, talking about various issues. And as I said, I am impressed with the energy and passion of folks both in the community and in the hospital. I can tell you that we have a great hospital staff. We have people who are committed to providing health care for the communities we serve. And, from a philosophical perspective, I believe that hospitals in rural communities in particular play a central role in the community. If you're going to be successful, you have to play a central role in the community. By central role, I mean, obviously, to be a destination for people who need health care. We want everyone in our community to choose us for health care, and we want to be a place for people who otherwise don't have a choice to be able to come for high-quality health care. We have some challenges, I would tell you. I would have to acknowledge that during my time here and meeting so many people, there are some key services that we've got to fill in gaps, things like gastroenterology, things like orthopedic surgery, things like general surgery, and we have a plan, are developing more plans, and then we have to execute on those plans so that we have the services available for folks to be able to receive health care in their local community. I would say that I have to acknowledge that there's been a challenge over the past couple of years that's not unique to this community. I think it's been difficult in this community, and that's around ED operations and the topic of how we partner with our EMS partners and being on diversion. I can tell you that I think in 2022, the calendar year of 2022, the hospital was on diversion some portion of 174 days, and that's just too much. And I'm proud to report through the work of our staff and our medical staff, since January the 23rd, we've been on diversion 0 days. So that means that people who need to bring us patients can bring us patients. We have some challenges that we still need to work through in terms of throughput in the emergency department, but we have a dedicated staff. We have a dedicated group of physicians who are focused on meeting those challenges. But we want to be a reliable partner to our EMS folks from throughout our service area, and I think we're making some headway towards that. Along the lines of developing service lines, we have aggressive recruitment plans for physicians. We've got 1 and possibly 2 new general surgeons joining us later this year to open up services. We are aggressively recruiting in the specialty of gastroenterology. We have a new orthopedic surgeon who will be joining us later in the summer. And again, we need to grow those medical specialties so that we can, medical and surgical specialties, I should say, so that we can more reliably serve every patient who wants to be served by us. We do have 3 major projects that are slated to kick off sometime this calendar year. One is the renovation and expansion of our emergency department. Those folks do a great job in some pretty cramped space, and so we need to execute on that plan, and we intend to kick it off sometime here in the summer. It'll take us about 18 months to complete the plan, but it will increase the footprint of the emergency department by about 50% and modernize some things that and make for a better workflow both inside and outside of the emergency department. In addition to that, we're in the process of installing a new linear accelerator. That's a tool for cancer treatment that will allow us to keep more patients from our communities in our community as we provide cancer care. And then finally, we're replacing the first of our 2 cath labs. I think both of them will be done over the next several years, but replacing one of them with that project to start later this year as well. All told, that's about $30 million of capital investment that we intend to make. We've got to continue to develop our workforce. I would tell you that healthcare is hard these days. The labor shortages are real, and they are across the country. They existed in Western North Carolina. Supply chain issues and shortages are real. We see something, a basic supply almost every week becomes on shortage, and we have to scramble to figure out how to accommodate that. But I think we have a committed group of folks and a great staff and a great medical staff at our hospital. I would say that this notion of engagement with the community is really a central part of what we have to do. Sometimes, I tell our folks a lot, number one, I'm proud of the work they do, but number 2, we have to be engaged with our community. And sometimes we are engaged at times when we have things to celebrate, like new buildings or new equipment or new physicians or somebody winning an award. And sometimes we have to be engaged when it's tough to be engaged, when we have to have a difficult conversation about something that didn't go well. Either it didn't go well for us or it didn't go well with somebody else. But engagement is engagement, however that happens. And so my commitment as the CEO of the hospital is that we will be engaged. We'll be engaged when it's pleasant. We'll be engaged when it's not pleasant because that's the way you solve problems and get better. I would conclude by saying, and then I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, that very simply, I think I see the role of the hospital again as being this central community partner. We can't be, and no rural hospital can be all things to all people. Not possible. We have to pick where we can have maximum impact. I think we have a decent idea of that, and then we have to partner with others in the communities that we serve to build capacity, because at the end of the day, that's what this is all about. It's about building capacity so that the people who live here can simply live better lives. We can't do it all on our own. No one agency in our communities can do it all on their own, so it is essential for us to partner together, and that's what we at SOVA are going to be committed to while I'm here. Can I answer any questions?
Any questions?
I have one. Are y'all looking at any time with partnerships with other facilities? You mentioned some of the improvements y'all were going to do. Is there a possibility like working maybe with Duke or UVA or something to that effect that would enhance the operations of the hospital?
The simple answer is yes. So the more long-winded answer is this. So we evaluate partner opportunities all the time. And interestingly, you mentioned Duke. We have a very formalized partnership with Duke right now. For example, the cardiologists who practice at our hospital are a part of Duke Cardiology. The radiation oncologist who practice at our hospital is a part of the Duke Cancer Program. We collaborate on a lot of clinical services. Today, I didn't get to be on this call, but we have monthly or quarterly integration calls essentially with Duke, so that we're always talking about if there's something that we can't do locally, how do we, in partnership and in service to the best service we can provide to the patient, create a smooth transition if that patient is appropriate to go to Duke. Beyond that, I think that we have to be, and we are, open to partnerships with pretty much anyone that helps us expand our capacity, the capacity that serves the community. So we'll continue to look for opportunities to partner and formalize. Sometimes those will take informal structures, and sometimes they'll be formalized, kind of like the partnership around cardiology that we have with Duke. But we need to continue to enhance those things.
Thank you.
Mr. Warren?
I have one question, but a couple of comments first. I had the pleasure of serving on some boards with Eric Deaton, one of your prior colleagues, and then also got to work with Alan Larson on some projects. So I would tip my hat to SOVA because they have been very willing to be engaged with us and talk to us and help the county. I remember it's been approximately 3 years ago. My colleague, Mr. Ingram, might remember exactly, but there was a lot of concerns about the fact that the Brosville facility had been closed down. And I remember having the conversation and initial conversation with Alan about opening that back up at the community center. And I really appreciate and I want to say thank you to SOVA because I hadn't had an opportunity publicly to thank SOVA for stepping up and reopening that facility. I know it's done a tremendous job for our folks up in the western end of our our county. Also, I want to say thank you very much to reaching out and seeing the need that I think all saw as a board down near the airport for purchasing that facility and reopening it. With the amount of activity from an economic development standpoint that's going on both around the Institute and the Airside Park and at Ringo, I think it's very important to have that facility there. And regrettably, someone else decided to close up, but thanks to SOVA, you all stepped right in and got that up and running, and my understanding is it's open now and operational, so.
It is, and a resounding success.
Good.
Absolutely.
Very good.
Good. The other thing I wanted to ask is, I had the pleasure of speaking when you made the original announcement about all the upgrades and renovations going on at the emergency room. How long before full completion and it's operational? I'd like to know if you got a date on that.
Yeah, the best guess I can give you at this point, so we're having to deal with some moving parts around the supply chain, how that affects the budget and all that. I think the goal is to get started by around the August timeframe, I would say. And we think that, there are going to be some moving parts with that. We've got to move the ED operation into a temporary location on the second floor. That will be less than ideal for a span of time, but we want to do as good a job we can, coordinating with our partners, including EMS, so that we, have good throughput to that temporary facility. And then once we start construction, I think it'll take about 15 months or so, 12 to 15 months. This decision was made before I got here, but I think it's the right decision. We decided to, rather than try to continue operating in the emergency department and do the construction in phases, it would be better just to move out and we can get it done quicker. I think that's the right thing to do. So from the time we get started, which I hope is around August or so, it should be 12 to 15 months afterwards.
Thank you.
Okay?
Mr. Ingram?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Heatherly. Thank you, sir, for being here. I don't know whether it's your presence or what, but the diversions, which has been a hot topic throughout the county, has went down substantially to almost nothing. And we truly appreciate that because, see, our county has 21 volunteer fire and rescue organizations and over 600 volunteers. And it's tough enough to get volunteers, particularly with the climate of things going on, things being said. But, when a volunteer has to answer a call and be mindful of, hey, I've got to be at work at a certain time. You have some that don't answer calls because they can't sacrifice their job. And so it is so important. I have a constituent, she's soon to be 91, that sat in an ambulance on the parking lot for 3 hours. And, whatever you've done, we really appreciate that. So keep doing it. I guess I'm a little bit more sympathetic with you and so because I got criticized one time for being too understanding with SOVA. But see, I have 6 nurses in my family, and 2 of them work at SOVA, and one of them's in the ER. And so I know firsthand not only the volume of work, but what they go through. And it's not their fault. It's not it's a lot of factors, as you well know. And to hear that it's gotten better and that you're going to make it better means a great deal, and we thank you for that. SOVA has entered into a great relationship, for how many years, I'm not sure, with Duke as far as cancer patients and cardio heart issues. And I think that's great. So, to me, if we could get back to I don't want to say the routine ER business, and I know they're going to come, but those partnerships, I think, has been phenomenal, and I encourage you in what you can do to expand on that. I was with Mr. Warren when the announcement was made about the expansion of the ER. And I said all the good stuff to say the bad. When the construction starts, I surely hope that we don't regress back to having a parking lot full of ambulances loaded down with people. So I just had to throw that out. And I dealt with Alan Larson the last part of 21 into 22 with the opening of the Broswell Clinic. And we're very grateful for that. And so I did want to thank you for that. So having said that, welcome and keep doing what you're doing. Thank you,
Thanks so
sir.
much. Thank you.
Mr. Tucker?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Heatherly, thank you so much for being here this evening. I guess my question is more or less about capacity. And you had mentioned that you're working on additional staff, but what is your vision long-term, 5-year, 10-year plan as far as expanding the hospital in light of the casino coming to Danville, because there will be a dire need, I guess, for the bed space?
Yeah, so let me answer that a couple ways. One, I would tell you, notwithstanding the growth in the community that will occur, and it will occur, we have an incredible opportunity to grow how people use the hospital. So, we're, depending on the service line, we're at something like 40-50% market share. And so that means that half or more of the people who need a service choose to go somewhere else, and that's certainly their choice. In times past, because of this ER capacity issue, and in some cases today because, for example, we don't have gastroenterology coverage or we don't have orthopedic coverage, someone may be forced to leave the community, and that's really what I want to address first, is building that capacity to serve people and to not create a lack of choice for them by forcing them to go out of the community, but then those who make choices to compel them to choose us. So I think we've got incredible opportunities to grow, notwithstanding the community growth that's going to happen. And keep in mind, in our business, I'm a finance guy by training, so obviously there are financial implications for growth. But growth from a healthcare perspective means that more people from this community can choose to have healthcare in this community. That's really what growth is all about, and they receive that healthcare in this community. That means their families can be more involved in the care that they deliver as opposed to having to travel out of town. So that's really what we focus on relative to growth. You asked me about a 5 to 10 year vision. What I would tell you is the next 2 to 3 years, we've got to rebuild in some areas that at one point may have been stronger at SOVA. I don't know the full history, but a hospital the size of the one in Danville, should not be without GI coverage. It should not be without orthopedic coverage at any time. And so we've got to build capacity on those key secondary level specialties. Then beyond that, when we get that done, or we get along the way in that, there are things that we need to do to really, what we call, climb the clinical ladder, offer more complex care. So for example, I mentioned that we have 2 new general surgeons potentially joining us. One for sure, one we're waiting on a final decision about by the end of this year. Both of those surgeons are robotically trained, and so we are beginning the discussion and the planning with our medical staff about introducing robotic surgery at our hospital. It'll probably take us 12 to 18 months to do so. So what I would tell you is, as we get that foundation laid, what we need to build on it is the ability to offer more advanced care closer to home for people, and we make the hospital a destination for healthcare for the region. That's ultimately the 5 to 10 year vision. And there are a lot of specifics, subspecialties in orthopedics, subspecialties in cardiology that I think we can achieve here once we get that foundation laid.
Thank you, sir.
Any more questions, gentlemen? Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thanks so
for
much.
everything you're doing.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
All right, moving to item 6, staff, committee, and/or constitutional officer reports. 6A, this is going to be Miss Holly Kazee, the Little Initiative and Informational Update. Can you give us that update, Miss Holly?
We got a little technical errors going on, I'm sorry, but I will go ahead and start. Over the past month, we've been discussing the issue of litter in Pennsylvania County, and last week we had a meeting. It was with Mr. Terrell, Mr. Arnold, Mr. Adcock, Sheriff Taylor, Jay Craddock with VDOT, and myself. And we just wanted to bring an update to the board on what come out of that meeting. I want it.
Give her a little more mic, too, if you don't mind. I can't hardly hear.
clicker's not working. So on the first slide, I just wanted to share some just general Virginia litter facts. This comes from virginiadot.org. It says that nearly 3.5 million taxpayer dollars are spent each year on the cleanup of the Virginia roadways, that more than half of the roadway litter comes from motorists and another 25% from pedestrians. The significant roadway litter comes from vehicles with improperly covered loads, and then nearly 3/4 of the litter comes from people consciously choosing to litter on Virginia's roads. So what we discussed was the how litter cleanup was handled in the past, and some of the ways that was handled was trustees through the Pittsylvania County Jail. Okay, Scott. The VDOT contracted pickups, the Adopt a Highway program through VDOT, and Camp 23. Next, please. So first we have the trustees with the jail. Speaking with the Sheriff Taylor, that inmates with no convictions of violent crimes or domestic violence can go become a trustee and go out, but they are only used on public thoroughfares and municipal land that there is no private property, and typically they're just used on the primary highways. Then we have the VDOT contracted pickups. From 2022, the cost of that was $146,000. They do that twice a year. In January, it was $50,000 with $24,000 going to primary roads and $26,000 going to secondary roads. In May, it was $96,000 with $18,000 going to primary roads and $78,000 going to secondary roads. The cost of this cleanup does include the disposal of the bag trash. So none of that goes, through, it's already included in the price. And right now, currently, all citizen and board complaint roads are on these lists to be picked up. Next, thank you. The Adopt a Highway, after a group signs up and they do 2 pickups, which is typically in the spring and the fall, a sign is erected with that organization's name, and it's for a 2-mile stretch of highway. VDOT does supply any supplies, bags, what is needed for the pickup, volunteers to pick up the trash, and they do go back and pick up that bag trash that has been collected. And each year, more than 23,000 Adopt a Highway volunteers collect more than 44,000 bags of waste along Virginia's highways. And currently, there are 27 roads in Pittsylvania County that's been adopted, and that's on the next slide. I know it's kind of small, but here you can see there are companies that adopt highways, churches, families in memory of other family members, groups, Ruetan clubs, Boy Scout troops, and then there's the list of what roads they do cover. Another way it was picked up in the past was Camp 23. This is 2 gangs that come from a work farm in Halifax County. They cleaned up litter, vegetation, and did some beautification, but they have not done litter since COVID. And they do have approved work areas, which is similar to our trustees. Next, please. So looking at litter cleanup in the future, we want to get the trustees back out if we can. We want to continue with the VDOT contracted pickups, and we want to get hopefully more roads adopted. Next. After speaking with Sheriff Taylor, we don't have as many eligible inmates in the past that has participated. Right now, we could probably get 5 to 6 qualified inmates out with 1 deputy. They would be on primary highways. The sheriff did inform us that they do still have the equipment from previous years with van, trailers, weed eaters, mowers, all that stuff. And then we are looking at a possible contract with VDOT to help pay for that, that deputy going out. So in the future, some considerations that we are hoping to look at, in fiscal year '22, VDOT paid around $30,000 in landfill tipping fees. If those fees were waived, then VDOT could do an extra round of cleanup, because they do one in this 2 times a year. They'd be able to do an extra round of cleanup with possibly having Supervisor suggested roads on there. So roads that y'all would pick, that y'all feel need an extra round. And these waive fees would not include tire disposal or any special projects that VDOT has. And like I said, we are trying to work on a memorandum of agreement between the Sheriff's Office and VDOT to get payment for those deputies. And we're hoping to look at possibly some direct court-ordered community service, as well as hopefully extending this initiative out to civic organizations. Maybe more Ruetan clubs or Rotaries or Chatham First possibly could help us with the litter in the county. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Kazee.
Thank you,
Any
Howard.
questions for Ms. Kazee?
I don't really have a question, I have a comment. I would be opposed to waiving the tipping fees for VDOT. I think it sends a terrible message. We've got these other organizations and all that are willing to clean up roads and all, and we're not talking about waiving anything for those companies. I think there's other ways. If you get the contribution, if you get the payments from VDOT, you have the opportunity to use that $30,000 where it might be more wisely used than releasing it back to VDOT. I just think it sends the wrong message. And we talk all the time in here about how many mandates are passed and changed, that the state sends us more responsibilities for us to absorb, especially with, for example, education. More of the sheriff's bills they place back on the county as opposed to the comp board and all. I just think it sends the wrong message than the one we've been delivering to start giving that back. Sorry, Jay. But, you know, I just think we need to be careful when we do things like that, because it almost looks like we're saying two different things. They're passing all the expenses on to us and reducing their own expenses, and then we're going to give away tipping fees to a state organization. I mean, I just think the optics of it looks pretty bad. Thank you.
Mr. Ingram?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to be clear, the cost, is what the county incurs or the cost to the state, what you listed for January and May? Do we get a bill from the state for that, Jay?
Come on up.
And I did have another question for you.
That's the cost that VDOT incurs, but no, we don't bill the county for it.
Okay, well, thank you. You know, one problem that we've all seen, and it's very visible right now, is you come out of the city of Danville on 58, and their highways are well manicured. Grass is cut and it's clean. You hit the bottom of Callahan's Hill and you got grass 3 feet tall. And so when the grass is finally cut, it eats up all the trash and debris that's already in the grass. And it makes it look 10 times worse. So what, if anything, can we do to, and I know part of the answer, but what can we do to have a better cycle of cutting the grass so that it would make it easier for people that would be willing to come and pick up trash, because, you know, a lot of people are worried about what they may find in those weeds.
Well, we just got through with our first round of litter pickup for the spring.
Yes, sir.
And so all the primary routes are done. We're probably 3/4 of the way through the secondary routes. So for the exact reason you just gave, the thought was we'll get the trash picked up before we do our first mowing of the year so the mowers don't chop up all the trash.
Yes, sir.
So that was kind of the reasoning for the timing behind it. We plan on picking up litter again in the fall after our last mowing. So that way, hopefully it'll look good through the winter months.
Okay.
But where there's no grass to hide it.
Jay, is there any state provisions that would inhibit a private citizen from cutting grass in a medium?
No,
I know
sir.
every now and then you'll see somebody doing it, but I've been posed with that question. I don't know the correct answer.
The correct answer is that they should get a permit from VDOT to do it, but that's not a big deal. We'll give them a permit to do it.
Okay.
And I know of several locations where it's done. On 29, just north of Chatham, there's a long stretch where a citizen mows the median.
Okay, that's good, thank you. Last thing, Stuart, when I met with you the other day and we briefly talked about this, I'd met with Judge Moreau last year and she said that she would be more than willing to look at community service in lieu of, which I think I've heard Judge Turpin say that as well. So there's a tremendous resource as far as people working off community service and being able to do things that need to be done. And, another avenue that we talked about was that instead of putting that burden on the sheriff's office, the city of Martinsville had 2 part-time people that managed their inmates, and they would pick them up in the morning, they'd give them a bag lunch, and these inmates were more than happy to do it, and some that were not incarcerated. So, and the pay was minimal with no benefits, so maybe looking into the future, that could be something we could look into. Anyway, thank you, Jay.
Any more, Mr. Warren?
Yeah, Mr. Ingram brought some things up that made me think about when I get the calls. I don't get many calls during the summertime and all about litter. When I get them is when all the foliage dies and people can see the trash, because it's not hidden by anything. But even then, I don't get a lot of calls. I don't know that I believe that 996 square miles has any more litter issue than most counties. Certainly, we'd like to not have any, but I don't know that it's a number one big deal problem for Pittsylvania County. I think where I get the biggest complaints, and I think Mr. Ingram and some other board members could attest to this, is we get complaints about the Dry Fork Road and the roads used to get the waste, the household trash, from that western end over to the landfill. So, and that comes, we all know when you bring in trucks in of that size that's picked up the waste out of the gondolas and everything else, that it's going to blow stuff. It is. No matter how much you try to conceal it, it becomes a problem. But that's when I hear it the most. And I'd be curious to hear from my colleagues if that's when they hear the most about it, is actually in the fall versus, when all the foliage is good.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
let me bring up something that's probably not popular, but I have received phone calls about tires, people discarding tires all over the county. And I don't know, Ms. Kazee, thank you for your report. I don't know if that was part of the discussion. The trash is one thing, but those tires just kind of stay there forever. So I think from the window I sit and look out of, we need to at least incorporate that into our discussion as far as cleaning up the county, and something needs to be done in terms of enforcement. And I know there's a lot of dumping at night, that sort of thing, but there are just too many tires that are discarded on the side of the highway. Your thoughts?
I agree.
Jay, the state used to fund a tire remediation where they would pay you per tire to, I think that money's dried up though.
That's not something I'm aware of. But Mr. Tucker, I definitely agree with you. One thing we can do that may or may not help with enforcement is if there is a site where there's obviously repeated occurrences of people pulling at the end of a dead-end road and dumping trash or something of that nature, we can put up no dumping signs for what that's worth. And we do have to clean up areas like that from time to time if the trash is actually on the right-of-way.
Mr. Chester, you got a question?
One of the comments on there was Camp 23. and it hasn't been used since COVID. What needs to be changed to make that happen again?
It's really just a staffing issue with the Department of Corrections. They don't have the people to be able to send out gangs of inmates like they used to. Prior to COVID, we were getting 5 gangs a day, and that's, you got to remember too, that's split between Halifax and Pittsylvania County. So covering both counties, 5 gangs a day, and then when COVID hit, it got shut down altogether. And then as we started coming out of COVID, we just never could get them back, and we've had meetings with the Department of Corrections, and it's basically a staffing issue. But right now, we are back up, thankfully, to getting 2 gangs a day out now. So you could figure a gang a day split between the 2 counties, but we're primarily using them right now for other things we need done. Right now, we're using them to cut the paradise trees off the cut slopes on the 4-lane highways, because that's something that they've always done for us, in addition to picking up litter. But right now, right now that's more of a need than the litter, and we also have this litter contract now, which is a tool that we didn't have back then, or we didn't utilize as much.
I don't know if this would be a thought for the board. Being that we do have a big problem with litter, I mean, I know there's stretches I've been through the county. The fines that we give for litter, is that something maybe we could raise to make maybe an statement that, you know, that it's not looking good for our county, and wonder if that would be something that could be considered?
Yeah, might help. I mean, it was raised a few years ago, I think. Might have been in your time, Mr. Warren. Did it go up to 500 to 2,500? Is that right?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I mean, it did raise up, but
What is
good
it
question.
now, like is it 250?
Like I said, it changed. I don't know exactly how much, but that may be something we need to look at. But most of my calls, which was really before the grass ever started growing back in February and March, you know.
Yeah.
Pittsville Road, Painting Road, off of 29 back to Shiva. I mean, I had people just complaining, but I guess they go up at the store at Whittles and get stuff and go down the road and eat and drink and throw it out inside the road. So that was my biggest complaints.
Well, we did do it a little different this year. Like Holly mentioned, last year in 2022, we picked up in January. And this year we decided to wait until late April so it more coincides with our first mowing, which we're getting ready to start. Would you say that you got more complaints this year than last year?
Yes, I did. Yep, I got more of them right before the grass started growing. Yep,
So you could change it probably maybe late February, March.
yeah.
And the plan was to pick up sometime in late October or November after we were done mowing for the year to get us through those winter months. But I
Right.
think what happens is by the time you get through November and December, by the time January comes around, it's littered up again, and there's no grass to hide it. It's just
That's right.
whatever's there, you can see it.
Exactly. Do y'all have a standard procedure on cutting the grass like on the primaries? I mean, you schedule twice a year, 4 times a year? Or
3 to
what is
4
that-
times
What
on
determines
primary.
that?
Well, it 3 to 4 times a year on primaries, depending on the weather. If we get a
Rain stuff.
rainy year where it grows more, we might get an extra cutting in.
Okay.
We try to get it cut right around the Memorial
Is
Day
it a
time
certain,
frame. Yes.
certain height y'all go by? I mean, that determines whether you get the rain and stuff, I know.
It's not all that specific. We do, you know, if we get calls where there's sight distance issues at crossovers and places like that, we'll go out and just cut those isolated areas before we do a full-blown mowing. But we generally try to get it done at Memorial Day for the holiday weekend for our first mowing. And we also spray growth retarder on it at the beginning of the year to try to slow it down and make it last until then.
Okay, that's good. Thank you, sir. Mr. Terrell, do you have a question, sir?
In your opinion, the reason that
there's a large number of tires on the side of the road. Is that due to the tipping fee as a prohibitive? They're trying to avoid that, or just people find a particular location they find easy to dump?
I don't know, that might be something that Mr. Adcock may be able to
What
speak to.
typically happens is people charge customers to remove old tires from their car, and then they want to keep that as profit, and they don't want to pay the disposal cost of the tires when they dump it in our landfill. So it's really
Mr. Chairman.
financially motivated typically.
Chris Adcock could address this, but don't the tires have to be cut in half before you could accept them? Which is an additional cost that they're trying to avoid.
Well, yeah, we have to cut them before we dispose of them, but we'll take them as a whole tire.
Okay.
So we don't make them cut them before they come to us. I think it's probably more of a travel distance issue with a lot of people. They don't want to travel all the way to the landfill to dispose of them and then pay $3 per tire. So they just find a convenient spot to dump them.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Any more questions, gentlemen? Are we fine? Thank you, Mr. Crowder.
Thank you,
Any
Jay.
more questions? Thank you for all you do.
All right, thank
Appreciate
y'all.
it.
Doing a good job.
All right, moving to item 6B, VDOT Ty-Squee Road, US 29 improvements discussion. That's going to be Mr. Warren, your pleasure.
Yeah, after receiving an outpouring of phone calls, probably the most I've received since I've been on the board on a particular issue, I think it's something we need to look at really closely, because it's apparent that from the calls I have that our citizens are not happy with the decision to close that crossover. And the more I've looked at the details, the more concerns I actually had. And I've pretty much always kind of put Mr. Craddock up on a plateau, and I still do, because he's the man when it comes to this kind of stuff. But I feel like maybe it coming through the 6-year plan and all, I'm not sure the citizens really paid attention to it until it got to the point it is now, Jay. But I have a lot of concerns, and I thought we needed to address it, because I've talked to one of our major industries here that relates to agriculture, that says when the number of trucks that comes out of his place that would go straight across, that will now have to make a right-hand turn, go down and U-turn and come back up. Well, when I looked at that, even coming over this evening, Jay, it gave me a lot of concerns about where we're showing you go down to and U-turn, because a tractor trailer or a big truck's gonna have to make that U-turn, maneuver 3 lanes to be able to take that right-hand turn. It just appears with everything going on down there at that, where Frank's is with that strip center, where that crossover is, and everything coming out of Valera and Subway and all, that's going to create a pretty congested spot there to put that much additional traffic on it. And as we talked before, you told me the study showed like 25 accidents over a 5-year period. Well, you know, Mr. Dalton and I were talking about it right before the meeting started. We certainly don't want any accidents at all. We'd like to have 0 per year, but 5 on average per year at that intersection. And when you factor in that what percentage of those are 16 to 18-year-old drivers, which we know increase thing, I'm not sure we really have a significant accident-prone area there. I mean, I know it meets it by the criteria, and I'm not questioning it. I'm not questioning Virginia. I'm just saying, because of the outcry that I've heard from the citizens that are directly affected on a daily basis by that, I have to say that my support of it has definitely changed, and I feel like I dropped the ball because I didn't do more to inform them about the 6-year plan. And I know it was put out in the public and all that stuff, but you know, people tend not to pay attention to it till it really directly affects them. So that's why I put it on here, gentlemen. I wanted you all to know the calls I had received, and I'm sure you all have received some. And you know, I will go ahead and tell you it's my intentions that after we have this discussion to make a recommendation that we issue a letter from this board requesting VDOT to reconsider that and not make that change. And we would love for them to consider maybe using that $10 million on Dry Fork Road where we need some widening and expansion of it because we get calls all the time about vehicles not even being able to pass on that road. So I just want you all to know where I stood because of the citizens that have reached out to me.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Mr. Ingram?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Warren, I likewise have gotten a lot of calls on this intersection. And of course, I wondered, you know, where did it come from? Who started this? And this thing is over 4 years old, back when Greg Sides was here. So back then, I'm still not sure who started the initiative to have some changes made. But I likewise agree that it's nothing wrong with the intersection. Even if VDOT steps in and changes it, you're still going to have people that's going to go south, make a U-turn and come back. And you know, some might be carrying milk. You never know, big tractor trailers. So I think it's going to create more so of a safety issue. But the good news is, in talking with Jay, and he's absolutely the prince when it comes to this, is that, you know, we can tell VDOT no thank you, and we may get a small bill for their effort, but it would be nothing in comparison to what would be spent. And I do echo what Mr. Warren said, is that we have many intersections that we could use that money. Dry Fork Road is a primary example that would be money well spent. And so my vote would be to leave well enough alone. So, but in spite of that, I know you didn't, this wasn't something that you put on the agenda, but you know, thank you for working with us and giving us what information you can on this. Thank you.
Any more questions for Mr. Brown? If
Mr.
not,
Chairman.
I'd like to say, go ahead, Mr. Warren.
No, I was going to make a motion. I thought
Okay,
everybody
all
was
right.
through.
I just wanted to say I've also received a lot of calls about the change there. It's not in my district, but it affects a lot of my people in my district. And I'll do anything to support anything that'll keep anybody from getting hurt or getting killed by all means. But I don't want to take a little problem that we have and turn it into a real big one that's going to cost more and possibly cause more accidents than we have right there now. So I'm in agreement with my colleagues to let's review this thing, and it may be something we need to do. Slow the traffic down, put some warning signs up, rumble strips, or whatever y'all can do to help. But I think it's a better way to fix it and make it work, or just leave it alone. So thank you for everything you do, Jay. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Warren.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we issue a letter from this board thanking VDOT for all of their efforts and all in looking at this particular crossover, but that we follow the wishes of our citizens and request the abandonment of changing that intersection, and that we especially request consideration of using that I think it was 10.1,
11.4.
$11.4 million in another needed area within the county, with a specific instances of looking at the possibilities of maybe widening Dry Fork Road because of the traffic on that road in order to make it safer. I know we can't dictate that, but if you all would take a look at it, it would be greatly appreciated, and we apologize for any inconvenience this has caused VDOT because Mr. Craddock and the whole team at VDOT have been wonderful to work with, and this is just an answer to our citizens that have obviously given us a sounding review of their wishes, and we're following those. And it has no reflection whatsoever on the work done by VDOT.
I'll second that one.
All right, that's your motion. You got Mr. Tucker, you second. Did you have a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I concur with the entire board. I was only going to ask Mr. Warren to put his recommendation in the motion, and he did just that.
Okay. We got a motion from Mr. Warren. You seconded, Mr. Tucker?
I did.
Oh, you,
I
Mr.
did.
Did, Mr. Ding? I'm sorry. Okay. All right, any more discussion? If not, we ready to vote.
So this will,
Passes 7-0.
this will just move it to tonight's business meeting, correct, Mr. Hunt?
That's right. Is that
Yes,
correct?
sir. And I've already drafted a letter. I'll circulate it after this meeting so y'all can eyeball it. And I do want to second what Mr. Warren and others have said. In my almost 13 years I've been here, Jay has been one of the best
Absolutely.
civil servants I've ever seen. He answers his phone immediately. He follows through with projects, and he's been a true blessing to this county and the Commonwealth. So this is nothing, this is not a negative reflection on VDOT or himself. It's just we have to listen to the concerns of our citizens.
Do you have any comments, Mr. Crider?
Well,
Sorry.
I did bring you know, they say a picture's worth 1,000 words sometimes.
Yeah.
I brought a handout if y'all want to look at it, or is it kind of too late? And also, the consultant that's working on the design of this project, they've been working on a video simulation to help people understand what the project would actually do. And I got it in an email about 5 minutes ago, just before I stepped up here, so I haven't even looked at it myself, but I could send that to you all, and you could have a chance to review it.
That'd be good.
I could email it directly to you.
That'd be great.
I mean, but if you pass your resolution tonight, or are you willing to wait until you see that stuff and maybe have the public hearing phase, or the public hearing is scheduled for May the 23rd?
That's at Chatham High School.
Yes, sir.
Is that right? Okay. I mean, we done already made up our mind. Ain't no,
Okay,
really
well,
no
that's-
need waiting till the 23rd.
That's what I thought.
I mean,
We go. I would like to see that, though,
Yeah.
Jay, if you don't mind
I
sharing.
would like, I'm gonna plan to come. I'd like to see.
Yeah,
it.
I'll be there on the 23rd, too.
Yeah.
but
Hey, Jay, if you email me the simulation and this in electronic format, we'll make sure it gets to the board in the Friday update.
It might help me from getting whipped,
That's
Jay,
right.
as I get phone calls.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, buddy.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you, Jay.
But just to quickly go over this, you see the sketches at the top of the page, and all those lines crossing each other. The scenario on the left would be as it is today. Every line is where there's potential for a vehicle to travel, so everywhere two lines cross is a potential conflict point. So right now, there are 32 conflict points at that intersection, and then at the top right-hand side of the page would be the way it would end up after the project was complete, and it would reduce it to 14 conflict points. So the fewer conflict points equals fewer crashes. And the other advantage to doing this would be not only to lower the crashes, but to improve the flow of traffic through the intersection. You see all these pie charts. These are all the different scenarios, and the green is the time that the traffic signal is actually green. So the top row is as it is today, and the bottom row would be if we built the project. So you can see there's much more green light time if the project is built. So I guess it kind of seems counterintuitive, but it actually flushes traffic through the intersection better and more quickly. And because there's less time with people sitting at a red light, there's less exposure, and that greatly reduces the opportunity for rear-end collisions.
Well, I'm sure the study looked at how many right-hand turns you had coming out of those roads that are going to go down and have to U-turn, and how are they going to back up? I thought about it, Jay, I know you know this, coming out of Lynchburg,
Yes, sir.
you got one where there's a real frequent U-turn right there as you just coming out, getting out, away from the airport, past that and all.
Yes, sir.
And I've seen so many people have to lock it up right there. And that made me be a little more concerned about this one when they make that right-hand turn coming away from Chatham High School back toward Danville. The turnaround is at school dismissal and stuff like that. You know, is that going to back up that way and we have more rear ends versus, and we don't know until we won't know exactly until it's done, so.
Well, they did collect all that data, and the video I'm going to send you guys, like I said, I haven't seen it myself yet, but supposedly it actually shows a platoon of school buses and shows how that would work, according to the traffic counts they designed it based on.
And Mr. Ingram, I do think you're right. I had inquired about the same thing. I think this initially was requested to look into it by Mr. Sides when he was here, not by a board member.
That's right.
Any more comments or questions for Mr. Pratt?
Okay, well, I'll email y'all the
Okay.
video so you can watch it. It may help when you get phone calls.
All right.
Thank you, Jay.
Appreciate
Yes,
your
sir.
time.
Thank y'all.
Thank you for everything you do. Moving to item 6C, strategy needs assessment, initiative discussion. Mr. Terrell.
6C.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Do I have the clicker or is this manual?
It should be on. Oh, you're talking about the clip, okay.
Yes. Okay, so let me just do a quick follow-up to the letter. Thank you, Ms. Kazee. One part of that vision is to expand it beyond government to civic groups. I can sense a strong civic presence in this community to get involved, and we'll expand to that. Particularly, I noticed the Adopt-A highways. I had not realized there were so many of those. So that is the way to get on top of this and solve it. County Administrator, 45-day preliminary need assessment. Okay. So the purpose of this exercise is, even though this is preliminary, I've only been here 45 days, I certainly don't understand everything or the depth of all the problems. I think it is important for the county to achieve things at a strategic, long-term level. There is a tendency to become engaged in daily issues of the moment. While day-to-day issues do require prompt resolution, it is the long-term needs, goals, and projects which will measure success of the county's future. So the list I'm going to elucidate is not yet comprehensive, but an indication, after 45 days, admittedly, of what I and the staff see as prominent needs that do require clear strategic focus in the long-term overarching strategies of the county. So let's get started. First of all, comprehensive economic development. With the focus on large manufacturing, and I certainly understand that, and I'm getting up to speed and admiring what's going on, I do think we can broaden the scope to things such as small-scale manufacturing, homegrown entrepreneurs, tourism events, and more retail restaurant options. Now, the reason I say that is the economic developer of Danville stated very clearly that when an executive comes to your community and wants to relocate there, they look at the whole community. They look at the state of it, the cleanliness, the retail, the restaurants, and the downtown. So I would like to broaden, obviously the focus is on manufacturing. I respect that, and that is the way to raise the tide and lift all the ships here, and that's going to happen, I have no doubt. But when an executive comes here, they want to see the full spectrum of economic development. I've heard that stated numerous times. So I would like us to write our own strategy. I'll talk to you more about that. I'm reviewing all plans with the economic director. I've discussed it with some area developers and local civic groups. Obviously, I won't launch into that until I hear more back from you. But I'm anticipating beginning that June 23rd. Next up would be a housing strategy. Okay, so I hear this. This is as important as water and sewer to land manufacturing. There already, site selectors are looking at the sites, Berry Hill and the other sites, and they want to see not only water and sewer, but housing. They want to know how to house their workforce. We've climbed a mountain, in my opinion, in many of the workforce development. It's amazing what you have here. I've never seen that level of workforce development. It's a real asset. But we've got to get a good housing strategy. It's as important to landing the manufacturing sector as water and sewer, in my humble opinion. I think this should begin. I'll talk to community development director. I don't mean to put that all on your shoulders, but I will work that with you. Next up, fire EMS rescue. What are the current and future needs with the expected continued growth of the county? What are they? I need to know. I'm beginning meeting with volunteers and public safety to listen and understand the needs. I will take the lead on this. This has begun and is ongoing. Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Right now, I've spoken to the Parks and Recreation Director. We do have limited facilities, and I have a concern about the staffing level. There is an RFP set to go out. The Parks and Recreation Director would take the lead. I think we can get a contractor to begin looking at the master plan. But I want to emphasize, this doesn't necessarily mean money. There are things you can do with the assets that you have, with the wildlife, with the fishing program, which is fantastic. Doesn't take a lot of money. And access to the wonderful natural resources, the rivers, can be accessed through things like a kayak launch. You can get a grant for that. There's a number of things we can do to achieve a more comprehensive recreational program. I think we can have a contractor on this master plan, Parks and Recreation master plan this summer. Litter cleanup. We talked about litter complaints, the safety aspect, but also the visual impact. People want to see, executives come in here, want to see a clean county. They want to see that we're taking care of our home. It's important that this take on a drive and initiative. Gives citizens pride in the community. It's very important. We've begun this meeting with VDOT and the sheriff. Thank you, Sheriff, for attending May 4th. So Ms. Kazie's been assigned to help coordinate this, but again, the idea is we begin with government and then we move out to civic groups who have an interest and then get them engaged and let them, take some of the lead with this. You'll find there's a untapped resource there. Long-term cash flow for capital needs study. Okay, so there's talk about the new jail and the courthouse. There's school needs. We need to begin forecasting our cash needs now so we know what the needs are 1, 5, 10, 20 years down the road. And then we can, my strategy has always been, let's take that need and look at grants, cost share, state awards, federal awards. We have congressmen who've stated they want to help us. Senators, spoke to one at Berry Hill, wants to help us. But we need a plan of projects and can explain the cash flow needs. So the finance director and myself have already began discussion about that, and we'll begin it after the budget's adopted. So I don't like surprises in costs. I like to tackle them and offset it with money that is on the table elsewhere. There are literally millions of dollars, as we found out with ARPA, that there's a new transportation bill, for instance, they came out through ARPA. We can go after that money, and it would take an aggressive posture to find that. It's important to know where we stand, though, on all these projects in a comprehensive, strategic way. Comprehensive land use plan update. With the development on the way in Berry Hill, how can we balance development, housing, et cetera, with the protection of agriculture and the rural beauty that we wish to protect? That is the function of the comp plan, is how we use smart growth strategies to bring in economic opportunity, but also respect the agricultural history of this place, which makes it an attractive, wonderful place to live. I understand the comp plan dates back to 2010. It particularly, I think, needs updating for the development that's expected in the south, but I certainly want to include all the county in the land use plan and the north and the central regions. So this typically falls in community development, and also the planning district may be able to handle that. We'll talk more about that. Water sewer infrastructure. This is tied to the future vision for land use. How and where do we want to expand infrastructure? If we need more housing, then where should it go? And where does it make sense geographically? And then how will we supply the necessary water sewer? There are grants out there for these things from the federal level and from the state. This is tied into the housing that I mentioned and the comprehensive land use plan. So we need a clarification. I think there is an existing master plan, but I think it needs updating. But it has begun. All right, just two more, and I'm done. Oh, whoop. Okay, solid waste. Position vacancies. The reality is, folks, in the post-pandemic world, this was mentioned earlier, of finding qualified workers. It's hard finding qualified drivers, mechanics, staff in general. We are putting this as a higher priority with the HR executive team and moving to fill these positions. This is important. I know these convenience sites and the landfill are an important part of the service we provide, and it's important that we fill these vacancies in the near term. I expect to have these vacancies. By the way, I spent the day touring the landfill with Mr. Adcock. I enjoyed that. I'm still getting some of the grime off my shoes, but other than that, I enjoyed it very much. That is truly an entrepreneurial business, taking in revenues and providing the service. And I've also heard compliments that is one of the best managed landfills in the area. So if we need to fill these positions, then look at the organizational structure of the landfill. What is the best organizational structure to maximize the landfill as an entrepreneurial profit center? Can we make additional money, but also make sure it's done correctly environmentally, and making sure we're doing it the right professional way. So I want to take an organizational review, particularly with some vacancies, is a good chance now. And I've already talked to the landfill consultant. Okay? Going to begin on that in June. But I think there's a real opportunity now to get that tightened up, and the landfill can be seen as approached as a business, but it must be done correctly and protecting the environment. It must be balanced with that. All righty. Disaster management planning. I'm watching these tornadoes in the south over the spring and at Virginia Beach. There's more hurricanes now. Okay, I'm not going to be here and let this happen to us without a good plan to be ready. Not only with natural disasters, but we have to consider cyber attack now and the electricity grid, things that I'm watching how it's happening in other communities, and I'm trying to learn the lessons. We need a plan, and I discussed it at the recent Fire Association meeting. We can dust off some of the EOP plans, and there was another one, disaster mitigation, I think it was. All right, we need to dust those off and sit down at the table and come up with a solid plan so we're ready. Okay? Conduct some tabletop exercises. That's very important. The 1% sales tax for schools, how to meet current and future needs with the tax. The tax collection forms are out to businesses. I've discussed this with the finance director, and we'll manage this. It's ongoing. Capital project management. There's the broadband project, the jail, dam, discussion about the courthouse. This will require significant management oversight. It's already under discussion with the jail architect consultant. We're meeting regularly, but I want to think strategically about how to manage these projects and not just piecemealing it, but do it in a comprehensive way. Finally, the county constitutional officer space needs study. I think we need to understand the needs for the 911 center, what the constitutional officers need, and the administrative offices, what are exactly our current and future needs. This isn't underway, but I think it's an important exercise for us to engage in. So again, we're looking at things comprehensively about our available inventory and assets and can move things around strategically rather than piecemeal. Now, I know all this isn't free, and the next discussion will be if there are other items you think I should bring under this, and then how to fund them. Certainly, I'm not going to jump into something without an explanation of how to finance it. Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions, gentlemen?
I'd just like to know, Mr. Terrell, if you have reviewed, we've had 3 strategical plans done over the last 8 years. One was facilitated by Dr. Walker, one by Dr. Fawcett, and then one by staff. Have you reviewed those 3 strategical plans?
No, sir. This is what I'm coming in here fresh and just seeing and offering as a new observer.
I would highly recommend, because every topic you've mentioned has been covered in those strategical plans, and there's been things that have been implemented. I know you're looking at it from 10,000 feet right now, but I would say, before we get into delving in it as a board and with you and everything, that you take the opportunity to look over those, because there's a lot of good information in all 3 of them. So,
Will do. Thank you.
Any more questions, gentlemen? Thank you, Mr. Terrell.
My pleasure.
Moving on to item 7, business meeting discussion items. Mr. Hunt, do we have any items, sir?
We do not. The only thing that we're going to add to matters from the work session is just get the board to approve the mailing of the sending of the letter about tight squeeze to VDOT.
Okay, thank you. Moving to item 8, closed session. Mr. Hunt, can you read us into closed session?
Yes. Let me find the appropriate. All right. Tonight, for the board's edification and for people watching and listening at home, we have 3 closed session items. The first one is discussion or consideration of the acquisition of real property for a public purpose or the disposition of publicly held real property where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body. Legal authority, Virginia Code Section 2.2, 3711A3. Subject matters, jail and hurt properties. Purpose, review/discussion regarding the potential acquisitions of the same for a public purpose. The second item we have is personnel, discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific public officers, appointees, or employees of any public body. Legal authority, Virginia Code Section 2.2, 3711A1. Subject matters, interim Dan River Board member appointment, purpose, discussion of next steps. And the final closed session item for tonight is under legal consultation. Consultation with legal counsel employed or retained by a public body regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel. Legal authority, Virginia Code Section 2.2, 3711A8. Subject matter, operational medical director resignation. Purpose, consultation with legal counsel/legal advice and discussion regarding the same. We will now need a motion and a second, any discussion, and then a vote to go into closed session, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. Do I have a motion to go into closed session?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Cheshire. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Ingram. Any discussion? If not, gentlemen, we're ready to vote.
I'll take yours verbally then. Mr. Tucker?
Yes.
We good, Ms. Kazee? Are we good with everybody? Okay, thank you. All right, gentlemen. Closed session.
session at 6:52 PM. I will now certify the closed session. Be it resolved that the Pennsylvania County Board of Supervisors work session on May 16th, 2023, the board hereby certifies by recorded vote that to the best of each board member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act and identified in the motion authorizing the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting. If any board member believes that there was a departure from the requirements of the act, he shall so state prior to the vote indicating the substance of the departure. The statement shall be recorded in the board minutes. I will now do a roll call vote. Mr. Cheshire?
Yes.
Mr. Ingram?
Yes.
Mr. Scares?
Yes.
Reverend Tucker?
Yes.
Mr. Warren?
Yes.
Mr. Dudley?
Yes.
Chairman Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, the closed session is hereby certified and is now appropriate to adjourn the work session.
Thank you, sir. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.